Welcome to Money RX for CRNAs and nurse practitioners. I'm Brett Fellows, certified financial planner. Today, I want to talk about a type of question I get often. I'm a nurse practitioner. I'm 55 years old, and I have $1.2 million saved. Can I actually retire in the next 5 years? And what makes this question hard is not the math. It's that most NPs are measuring themselves against benchmarks that were frankly built for someone with a completely different financial situation. So today, I'm going to walk you through why that happens, how much it costs, and how to answer the question correctly using a real example. Allow me to introduce you to Diane. So Diane is an NP, 55 years old, single, hospital employed. She earns $148,000 a year. She has $1.2 million saved. Most of it is in her 403b, and she has a smaller Roth on the side. She owns her condo outright. She has no debt. Now, when she came to me, she was convinced that she needed $2 million before she could even think about retiring. Her existing advisor had been telling her she was doing great to just keep maxing out her 403b and reassess everything at age 60. So she'd been doing everything by the book, and she still could not answer the question with any sense of confidence. When we modeled her actual retirement, not against a savings target, but against her real life, what we found completely changed when she realized she'd be able to stop working. 3 things were standing between her and that answer, and they were not what she expected. The first was the tool that she was using to measure herself against, the 4% rule. So the 4% rule works like this. You take your portfolio, multiply it by 4%, and that's how much you can safely withdraw each year. At $1.2 million, that's $48,000 a year. Now, Diane's take home during her working years was over $8,000 a month. She looked at $48,000 and thought she was years short. But the 4% rule was designed for a 30-year retirement starting at age 65, with Social Security beginning almost immediately. It was never intended for someone retiring at age 55 or 60, with yet still a 10 to 12 year gap before Social Security even arrives. So the calculator she was using was built for someone else's situation. In practice, when you retire at 55, you will likely withdraw more than 4% in the early years, maybe 6%. Maybe 7% or 8%. Now, that's not reckless. That's actually correct if you understand why. Remember, Social Security is coming. And when it starts at age 67 or 70, your portfolio pressure drops significantly. So you're not going to be drawing down forever at that early high rate. You're just bridging a gap for now. So that's a completely different math problem than the one that the supposed 4% rule was designed to solve. So for Diane, applying the wrong rule to her situation made her believe she needed $2 million or more. It was not true. But she frankly had no way of knowing that without a different framework. Now that fed directly into the second rule that Diane was using, the 80% income replacement rule. So standard planning guidance says that replace 80% of your pre-retirement income. For Diane at $148,000, that's about $118,000 a year, nearly $10,000 per month. At $1.2 million, that monthly number looks almost impossible. But the 80% rule was built for workers whose costs stay roughly the same after they stop working. As an NP, yours don't. Consider what disappears the day you retire. CEU courses, licensing fees, malpractice tail coverage, scrubs, hospital parking, professional membership, work lunches, the commute. These aren't minor expenses. For a hospital-employed nurse practitioner, they could add up to hundreds of dollars a month, sometimes more. So when we went through Diane's actual spending, not her income, but what she was genuinely spending each month, her real working year expenses were $7,200 a month, not $10,000. So when we stripped out everything work-related, her retirement need dropped to actually $5,600 a month, not $10,000, not $8,000, $5,600. So the 80% rule had nearly doubled what she thought retirement would cost her. That correction alone changed her entire picture. But there was still one more belief holding her back. And this one had been actually quietly running the whole show. Healthcare costs before Medicare. Now, Diane knew clinically what healthcare costs. She'd seen the bills. She'd watched patients and colleagues navigate coverage gaps. Her mental estimate for pre-Medicare health insurance was somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000 a month. Now, from age 55 to 65, she was calculating $240,000 to $360,000 just in premiums. So that number on top of everything else made retirement at 55 just feel unreachable. So Diane's clinical expertise was working against her. NPs are positioned to catastrophize healthcare costs in retirement because, of course, they know what can go wrong. You have seen the worst case scenarios up close. But what most NPs don't realize is that healthcare costs in retirement is almost entirely a function of your taxable income, not your health status, not your healthcare needs. It's the account that you pull from that determines how much you pay. If Diane withdrew $75,000 a year from her 403b, well, that creates $75,000 in ordinary income taxed like a paycheck. At that income level, her Affordable Care Act premiums could run $18,000 to $22,000 a year. But if that same $75,000 came from a brokerage account where a large portion of the withdrawal is return of principal, her taxable income could be a fraction of that. So same money, completely different cost. Diane had almost everything in her 403b. She didn't know that this distinction existed. So she was pricing healthcare at worst case, assuming that there was no way around it. All right, so let's step back for a moment. 3 beliefs: the 4% rule misapplication, the 80% income replacement myth, and healthcare cost catastrophizing. Every single one of them was pointing Diane in the same direction. You're not ready yet. Keep working, save more, wait until you're 60. And every one of them was wrong. Not because she was in great financial shape by luck, but because she was measuring readiness with the wrong tools. They all created the same problem for her. She couldn't answer the question she'd been asking for years. Can I actually retire in the next 5 years? A better answer requires replacing the savings target with 3 specific answerable questions. Chasing a savings number instead, 1.5 million, 2 million, whatever it is, without modeling what retirement actually cost, will lead you to only one outcome. You need to keep working years past the point you needed to. What you actually want to know is this: does my plan work for my specific life? So that requires 3 inputs, not 1. Number 1, what does retirement cost me each month? With my real expenses, not some formula. Number 2, in what order do I pull from my accounts? And number 3, how do I use the years before Social Security kicks in, when my taxable income is low, to set up a smarter tax situation for the rest of my life? That's actually the foundation of what we call the nurse retirement system. It's not a spreadsheet or some savings target. It is a sequenced framework built from your actual lifestyle backwards that answers whether your 1.2 million works for your retirement, not for someone else's. So here's how the nurse retirement system worked for Diane. Step 1, map your actual retirement spend, not 80% of income. Pull the 12 months of real spending and subtract every NP-specific work expense. And what remains is your retirement baseline. So for Diane, as we said, that was $5,600 a month or $67,200 a year. Most people skip this step, frankly, but without it, you are planning against a number that's probably 20 to 25% too high. Step 2, income sequencing. The order you pull from accounts is the biggest tax decision of your retirement. So for Diane, the plan worked like this. Years 55 to 60, before she fully retires, she shifted a portion of her new savings from her 403b to a brokerage account. Now, definitely not all of it. She still gets the full employer match. But she stops throwing everything into pre-tax and starts building a taxable account that she can pull from cleanly in retirement. At age 60, she retires. So years 60 to 67, the gap before Social Security, she draws primarily from the brokerage account. This keeps her taxable income low. Her Affordable Care Act premiums stay at $4,800 to $7,200 range per year, not $20,000. At the same time, those years from 60 to 67 are the lowest tax years of Diane's adult life. So her income is low, so she converts a portion of her 403b to Roth each year, up to but not beyond the 12% tax bracket. That's roughly $29,000 a year in tax-free conversions in some years. And then she uses the standard deduction to eliminate the tax entirely. At 67, Social Security kicks in. Based on Diane's earnings history, her estimated benefit is around $2,100 a month. That's $25,200 a year coming in, which reduces her annual portfolio withdrawal from $67,200 down to $42,000. $42,000 from a $1.2 million portfolio is a 3.5% withdrawal rate. That is well below the 4% threshold that had her convinced she wasn't ready. And the portfolio we modeled still had significant assets at 85 and 90. Not because the math was aggressive, but because it was accurate. So Diane is retiring at 60, not 65. So she gets 5 years back she wasn't expecting. She's doing the trip to Japan she's been putting off for a decade. She's spending time with her mother, who's in her early 80s. And she actually volunteers at a free clinic 2 days a week on her terms. That's what the wrong benchmarks were costing her. Not money, time. So 3 things worth remembering from today. Number 1, the 4% rule was built for someone retiring at 65 with Social Security starting immediately. For a nurse practitioner retiring at 55 or 60, you can and should withdraw more early because, again, Social Security reduces the pressure later. And applying it without adjusting for the gap almost certainly overstates what you need. Number 2, your retirement spending is probably 15 to 25% lower than your working year expenses. Specific work costs will vanish the day you retire. So model your actual number, not a formula built for a different profession. And number 3, the account you pull from determines your healthcare cost. Not your health status, not your plan. It's your taxable income. Pulling from a brokerage instead of a 403b in early the retirement years can cut your pre-Medicare premiums by $10,000 to $15,000 a year. If any of this sounds like your situation, we can walk you through a retirement readiness assessment as part of our process. and you can schedule that call in the description below. You have spent your career taking care of other people's most important moments. You deserve to know with clarity when yours can begin. This is Money RX for CRNAs and nurse practitioners. I'm Brett Fellows with Oak Capital Advisors. Subscribe for more, and I will see you next time.
This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. This podcast does not engage in rendering legal, financial, or other professional services.